Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Sunday, May the 4th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, just a quick sports mention here at the top. If you're a hockey fan, and if you're a Dallas Star fan, then you probably enjoyed your game Saturday night quite a bit. They won Game 7 here in Dallas against the Colorado Avalanche. I don't know why they don't call them Denver, but anyway, that's another story. But they were trailing 2-0 after two periods and scored four times in the third period to win the game and win the series. It was an absolutely stunning game to watch. And if you have a chance, all you got to do is watch the third period. And it's one of the greatest. I don't know if it's the greatest hockey comeback ever, but it's got to be certainly in Dallas history. Dallas Star history has to be one of the best. So congratulations to the Dallas Stars. They're moving on. I'm not sure who they're going to play yet. I guess they're deciding that on Sunday. But great game for the Dallas Star. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today talking about Senator Fetterman, and there was what I would describe as a hit piece on the New York Times, quoting some of his staff and some people around him, saying that he was like very difficult to be with and always irritable and just a difficult person to be with. And someone even suggested that he may not be mentally fit to be a senator. That's a really bad thing to do. I think what's bugging a lot of Democrats about Senator Fetterman, as I wrote in my post, is that he's turned out to be a senator with a little bit of common sense. And he realizes that you can't just criticize Trump all the time or get all excited every time that Trump does something. That's not a policy. That's not governing. That's just a temper tantrum. And he feels that, the Democrats need to work with with President Trump and try to get some things done for his constituents. He represents Pennsylvania, a state that President Trump has won 2 out of 3 times, a state where a Republican senator was elected in 2024. So, look, it's a state that the best you can say about, if you're a Democrat, the best you can say about Pennsylvania is that it's a purple state, that it can go either way. And in that kind of a state, then, you got to govern for the best interest of the state. You can't just sit around and hate Trump 24/7 and expect people to take you seriously. So I think he's just catching a lot of flack. That is, Senator Fetterman, I think he's just catching a lot of flack because of the fact that he's willing to work with Trump and he's willing to say Trump is right here, Trump is wrong there. And one of the things that Senator Fetterman has done, and I give him a lot of credit for this, is to defend Israel and say, hey, I'm going to stand with Israel. I'm going to stand with Israel. And obviously, in today's Democrat Party, that's not always a popular thing to do. So check out my post over at the American Thinker. I've got a post coming out tomorrow talking about this insanity, and that's what it is, this absolute insanity of the 100-day presidency, or giving people report cards, if you will, giving presidents report cards after 100 days and somehow judging a presidency based on 100 days. It is absolutely insane. There's nothing in the history books that tells you anything about a president after 100 days. And I cite a couple of examples in my article. The last 2 presidents who were elected and reelected, and they were George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Well, George W. Bush in 100 days was not a man who, let's say, was giving any signs that he was going to be a very consequential president. In fact, most people were wondering if he would only be a one-term president because he had just been elected in a very controversial election. And, things were rough. The country was divided. Democrats were very eager to defeat him the next time around. They were certainly getting ready for it. And then 9/11 happens. And all of a sudden, President Bush goes to the top politically. And in the 2002 midterm elections, he becomes the first president since President Roosevelt in 1934 to actually win seats in the election. He won seats in the House and he picked up the Senate, which is not normally what presidents do. in their first midterm. They usually lose either the House or sometimes they lose both, or they certainly lose seats. Not President Bush in 2002. And who would have predicted that in 100 days? Nobody. Now let's look at President Obama. President Obama in 100 days was walking on water. President Obama in 100 days, I mean, they were getting ready to give him the Nobel Peace Prize. He had not been in 90 days, and they were already going to give him the Nobel Peace Prize, which they eventually did a few months later. Well, in November of 2010, he gets blown out in the congressional elections, in the midterms. He loses big in the House and almost loses the Senate. He had a pretty big lead. That's why he didn't lose at all. What happened? What happened to these two? Well, in the case of George W. Bush, as we mentioned, you had 9/11 and you had this big boost of patriotism and support for the country, and he rode that wave all the way to the midterms. In the case of President Obama, he had to start talking about Obamacare. He had to increase troops in Afghanistan. He had to back down from a lot of campaign promises that he had made about closing Guantanamo and changing the policy in Iraq. He basically left the Bush's policy in Iraq intact. So the consequence is that 90 days into his presidency, he walked on water. As we got ready for the midterms, he was having all kinds of problems, proving to people that he could even swim in the water. So, you just, this 100-day standard is just absolutely silly. It's a very cosmetic thing to do. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell you anything about the presidency. And in the case of President Trump, I don't know what's going to happen from now on. I can give you a couple scenarios, and I guess your guess is as good as mine. Scenario number one is that everything falls apart. None of these trade deals are done. Inflation takes over. And, people are paying a lot more for everything because of the tariffs. That's one scenario. If that were to happen, he's in deep trouble. The Republicans are in deep trouble in 2026. The other scenario, which is just as likely, is that he does the trade deals. He negotiates all these deals. He comes up with, he and the United States and China have a deal. The Ukraine situation gets resolved. They put through that budget resolution through the House and the Senate. And now all of a sudden, come September, come October, come November 2025, he's looking pretty good. And things don't look that bad for the Republicans in 2026. Again, your guess is as good as mine on these things. They can go either way. But I certainly have no way of telling you what's going to happen 90 days or judging a president after 90 days or 100 days. It's a purely cosmetic measurement. And it's all about, I guess just doing a program and judging a president after 100 days. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. And that's why, everybody will forget about it. In 2 weeks from now, nobody's going to be talking about the 100 days because there'll be other things to talk about. So check out my post. That'll be out tomorrow morning. Over in Maine, that's that beautiful state up the coast. I've never been there, but everybody tells me it's an absolutely lovely state. And it is by looking at the pictures. Now, it's an interesting state because when you get out to the rural areas, it's very conservative, very Republican. But again, there is a part of the state there that is very liberal, and that's the part that is mostly populated. But anyway, in Maine, they've had a lot of controversy lately over men playing in women's sports. And in the last couple of days, you've had this man who, by the way, this man was coming in at number one. This is amazing. I want to make sure I give you the right information. He was number 172 among the boys, meaning there were 171 boys who were doing better than he was doing in the boys competition, meaning track and field. Then he runs as a woman, transgender, whatever you want to call him, and he beats the girls in the 1,600-meter race and the 800-meter race. He didn't just beat the girls. He rewrote the records. He beat them by a long shot, humiliated, really, many of the girls. And now Maine has a new track and field champion. In fact, new records being set by a man running as a woman. I think that's a disgrace. And every feminist group in the country should be up in arms about this. Should be saying That is bad. That should not happen, and we're going to condemn it. But for some reason, they don't. For some reason, many in the Democratic Party have somehow decided that this is the latest, I guess, the latest expression of civil rights, to have men compete as women in these events, and to make matters worse, defeat women and humiliate women as this guy did. Again, this is a guy, when he was competing as a man, when he was competing as a boy, he was number 172 among the boys. Not a, not a great place to be. But running as a girl, he's setting all kinds of records and beating all kinds of records. And there was a newsman who was watching all of this saying that, he was just blowing away the girls. I mean, the girl who came in second place wasn't even close. It was just blown away by this guy. Is that progress? Is that what you call progress? Because I don't. I think this is a humiliation of these young women, and something has to be done about it. Now, it's a local competition, and I guess, people run the local schools or whatever. But I think this is a humiliation, and it goes on because many of the Democrat groups and many of the feminist groups, for some reason, are willing to tolerate this. I don't know why, but they're willing to tolerate this. And as I said, in the process, they're humiliating young women. And I suppose in some cases, they may be taking trophies or scholarships from some of these young women. I'm not 100% sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are. And again, to me, that's not civil rights. To me, that's a humiliation of women. And all I can tell you is it has to stop. And I commend the Trump administration for doing whatever they can to stop this nonsense. It's not good. It's not good for the country. It's not good for young women to be humiliated like this in these competitions where you have a guy running as a woman defeating a bunch of young women. Give me a break. That's simply not something that can be tolerated. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and again, congratulations to the Dallas Stars for winning their the first round of the playoff series. And I'm not sure who they're going to play with next, but it's going to be exciting no matter who they play against. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. What's rest of it? And we'll talk to you later. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.